In the annals of history, few figures burn as brightly or defy expectations as thoroughly as the woman who navigated the treacherous waters of the 16th century, not merely as a survivor, but as a sovereign force. This was an age of empires clashing, of nascent nations asserting dominance, and of rigid societal constructs that confined women to the shadows. Yet from the rugged, untamed coastlines of Ireland, a legend was forged, a warrior, a chieftain, a formidable seafarer known as Granuaile, or more famously, Grace O'Malley. As the relentless tide of Tudor conquest cast its long shadow over Gaelic Ireland, threatening centuries of tradition and independence, Grace O'Malley emerged from the O'Malley clan, refusing to merely witness the erosion of her world. She inherited her father's ships, mastered the unforgiving waves, and commanded a fleet that rivaled any royal navy, plundering English vessels and asserting her sovereignty over the wild Atlantic. She was a force of nature, a strategic genius, and a leader who bent no knee. This documentary invites you on an audacious voyage across 35 compelling sections, delving into the extraordinary life of Ireland's legendary pirate queen. We will uncover her early years, her strategic marriages, her relentless battles against English authority, and the audacious journey that would see her sail into the very heart of the empire itself. Her path culminated in an unprecedented face-to-face negotiation with her formidable contemporary, Queen Elizabeth I, an encounter where Grace, against all odds, secured her freedom and, remarkably, retained her formidable fleet. Prepare to delve into a gripping tale of rebellion, unparalleled resilience, and the sheer intellectual might of a woman who dared to chart her own course and, in doing so, challenged an empire and forever etched her name into history. The 16th century, a time of seismic shifts across Europe, yet nowhere was the ground more volatile than in Ireland. This ancient land, steeped in Gaelic tradition and governed by powerful, independent clans, found itself precariously balanced on the precipice of profound change. From the east, the encroaching shadow of the English Tudor Empire stretched long and cold, threatening to extinguish centuries of autonomous culture. Dublin Castle, the seat of English administration, cast its gaze westward, seeking to subdue the wild Irish and impose its laws, language, and religion. It was a land of breathtaking natural beauty, yes, but also one scarred by constant skirmishes, political intrigue, and a relentless struggle for sovereignty. In this crucible of conflict, a new kind of leader was about to emerge, one who would defy every expectation and challenge the very notion of imperial dominance. Within this tumultuous landscape, on the wild western fringes of Connacht, dwelled the O'Malley clan. For generations, their domain wasn't landlocked fields, but the vast, untamed Atlantic. The O'Malleys were lords of UmHale, their very name meaning a maritime people. Their fortresses were the sea itself, their currency the fish of the ocean, and their power intrinsically linked to their formidable fleet of galleys. They controlled vital shipping lanes, levied tolls, and engaged in a maritime life that blurred the lines between trade, protection, and what others might call plunder. It was into this fiercely independent, seafaring dynasty that Grace O'Malley, was born around 1530. Her birthright wasn't a silver spoon, but the salty spray of the ocean and the unyielding spirit of Connacht's mariners. The sea coursed through her veins, a destiny she would embrace with unparalleled defiance. Even as a child, Graine's spirit chafed against the confines of 16th century feminine expectations. While other girls were taught the intricate arts of embroidery and household management, Graine yearned for the rigging of her father's ships and the thrill of the open sea. Legend has it that as a young girl, wishing to join her father on a voyage, she was told her long hair would get tangled in the ropes. Her response was swift and decisive. She seized a knife and, with a defiant chop, sheared off her own tresses. This audacious act earned her the nickname Granuaile, Bald Graine, a moniker that would follow her through history and symbolize her lifelong rejection of domesticity. She would not be confined to the hearth. Her destiny, she knew, lay upon the waves, charting her own course in a world dominated by men. As was customary for high-born women of her time, Graine's first marriage was not for love, but for power. Around 1546, she was wed to Donald and Chogade O'Flaithberte, Donald of the Battles, chieftain of the formidable O'Flaherty clan, whose territories bordered those of the O'Malleys in Connemara. This strategic alliance bolstered her family's influence and expanded her own understanding of clan politics and maritime strategy. Together, they navigated the treacherous waters of 16th-century Irish feuds. But Donald's aggressive nature ultimately led to his demise, ambushed and killed by a rival clan. It was then, upon his death, that Graine truly seized her destiny. Refusing to fade into widowhood, she inherited his lands, his formidable fortress of Bunowen, and, crucially, his fleet. The pirate queen had taken her first command. Following Donald's death and her assumption of control, Graine needed a stronghold that matched her ambition and strategic genius. She chose Carragahowley, better known as Rockfleet Castle. Perched precariously on a tidal island in Clew Bay, this unique fortress was accessible by land only at low tide, making it virtually impregnable from either side. From this strategic pirate's lair, Graine consolidated her newfound power. Rockfleet became the bustling nerve center of her burgeoning maritime enterprise. Here, she planned raids, oversaw her fleet's maintenance, and welcomed or repelled visitors. It was a symbol of her independence and defiance, a formidable bastion from which she commanded a growing armada, extending her influence and becoming a force to be reckoned with along the wild western coast of Ireland, a true sovereign of the waves. For the English administration, Graine O'Malley was nothing short of a pirate, a lawless menace disrupting trade and defying royal authority. Yet, from her Gaelic perspective, her activities were deeply rooted in centuries of clan tradition. What the English deemed piracy, Graine saw as the legitimate assertion of her territorial rights. She levied tolls on ships passing through her waters, a customary practice for chieftains controlling strategic passages. She raided rival clans and English shipping not merely for plunder, but to protect her domain, secure resources, and project power, much like a modern privateer. Her actions, while aggressive, were strategic, aimed at maintaining her clan's independence and prosperity in a hostile world. The line between pirate and legitimate power broker was often blurred in 16th-century Ireland. But for Graine, she was simply upholding the ancient ways of her people. Graine O'Malley was a pragmatist, and her second marriage, around 1566, proved just how keenly she understood the game of power. Her chosen partner was Risteard and Iaraine Burke, Iron Richard, a powerful chieftain of the Mac William Burkes. This was no romantic union, but a calculated political alliance designed to expand her reach and solidify her position against both rival Irish clans and the encroaching English. The legend says their marriage was for 1 year, on trial, and that after the term, Graine locked Iron Richard out of their castle, declaring the alliance over. But whether brief or long, this union strategically merged their formidable assets, her fleet and maritime expertise with his vast lands and military strength. It was a union that cemented Graine's status as a major regional player, further expanding her influence across Connacht. Through shrewd strategic marriages like those to Donald and Iron Richard, forging crucial alliances, and relentlessly asserting her maritime dominance, Graine O'Malley was not just surviving. She was building an empire. Her influence now stretched far beyond her ancestral O'Malley lands, encompassing a significant portion of Ireland's western coast. She commanded a fleet of galleys that could rival any regional power, controlling vital trade routes and extracting tolls from every vessel that dared to pass. From her secure bases, her network of intelligence and loyalty was vast. She defied the English attempts to subdue her, outmaneuvering governors and commanders with her cunning and military prowess. Grainmhale, the bald Graine, had transformed herself from a rebellious chieftain's daughter into an undisputed queen of the sea, a true force majeure in a century defined by conquest and ambition. As Grain OMalley forged her dominion along Ireland's rugged western coast, a formidable shadow stretched across the land, the relentless expansion of the Tudor Empire. From their throne in England, Elizabeth I's government was intent on imposing centralized rule across the entire island, viewing the intricate, ancient system of Gaelic chieftains not as a rich cultural tapestry, but as an unruly collection of obstacles. English officials, driven by imperial ambition and a desire for control, began to systematically dismantle traditional Irish power structures. They saw Grain and her independent spirit, her very existence as a sovereign power, as an affront to their authority and a direct challenge to their vision of a civilized Ireland. The stage was set, not just for political maneuvering, but for an inevitable, bloody confrontation between two diametrically opposed worlds. Of all the English officials dispatched to Ireland, none embodied this burgeoning threat more profoundly than Sir Richard Bingham, the ruthless, iron-fisted president of Connacht. Bingham was a man forged in the brutal wars of continental Europe, bringing a soldier's unforgiving pragmatism to the administration of Ireland. He viewed Grain OMalley not as a chieftain, but as a lawless pirate, a rogue element disrupting the order he was determined to impose. For Bingham, Grain was more than a nuisance. She was a personal and political challenge to English authority, a symbol of the untamed Gaelic spirit he sought to crush. He became her most persistent, most bitter adversary, their conflict a microcosm of the larger struggle for Ireland's soul. The intensifying conflict between Grain and Bingham was far more than a simple power struggle. It was a fundamental clash of two entirely distinct worlds, epitomized by their legal systems. Grain operated within the ancient framework of Gaelic Brian law, a complex, oral tradition rooted in clan loyalty, customary rights, and the shared heritage of the sea. Her authority derived from centuries of maritime tradition and her people's allegiance. Bingham, however, arrived armed with English common law, a written, centralized system that saw private land ownership, royal decrees, and strict judicial process as the only legitimate forms of governance. He sought to impose this foreign legal system, fundamentally disregarding the intricate customs and deep-seated loyalties that defined Grain's world, deeming them barbaric and illegal. This ideological chasm fueled their relentless antagonism. Grain's response to this mounting English aggression was a masterful orchestration of her established tactics. She was a master of guerrilla warfare, both on land and at sea. Her galleys, swift and agile, continued their calculated raids, targeting English shipping and coastal outposts, seizing supplies, and asserting dominance. On land, her intimate knowledge of the rugged Connacht terrain allowed her to evade and outmaneuver larger English forces, utilizing strategic ambushes and swift retreats. She leveraged the labyrinthine coastlines and unpredictable weather as her allies, transforming the very landscape into a weapon. Her resistance was not just about survival. It was a defiant assertion of Gaelic autonomy, a constant thorn in the side of English expansion, proving that even a powerful empire could be challenged by cunning, courage, and an unmatched understanding of one's own domain. Beyond the fierce pirate queen, Grain OMalley was a mother, and her family was both her greatest strength and her most profound vulnerability. Her three sons, Owen, Tibbet, and Murrow, and her daughter, Maeve, were integral to her complex web of power and alliances. They represented the future, the continuation of her lineage, and the very structure of her chieftaincy. Their strategic marriages could secure new allies, their strength in battle could defend her territories, and their survival was paramount for the legacy of the OMalley Burke clan. Every raid, every negotiation, every defiance of English authority was intertwined with the safety and succession of her children, creating a personal dimension to her struggle that transcended mere politics and ambition. For Grain, the future of her family was the future of her world. As the final decade of the 16th century dawned, the English tide of conquest surged with renewed ferocity. The Pale's influence now stretched deeper into Connacht, making Gray's pockets of independence increasingly precarious. Sir Richard Bingham, relentless in his mission, tightened his grip with brutal efficiency. His policies were designed to break the Gaelic chieftains. Punitive taxes stripped clans of their wealth, land confiscations eroded their territories, and summary executions served as stark warnings. These draconian measures pushed Gray and her family to the absolute brink. Their resources dwindled, their traditional way of life became unsustainable, and the very existence of the OMalley clan was gravely threatened. The long shadow of the English crown now fell directly upon her doorstep, demanding submission or annihilation. The relentless pressure reached a personal, agonizing breaking point. In 1593, a devastating blow struck at the heart of Gray OMalley's world. Her eldest son, Owen, was brutally murdered by Sir Richard Bingham's forces, ambushed and slain in cold blood. This was not merely a casualty of war. It was an act of calculated cruelty, intended to cripple Gray's power and spirit. The loss of Owen, her heir and a strong leader in his own right, ignited a fury within Gray that transformed her struggle. It ceased to be solely about territory or political maneuvering. It became a desperate, primal fight for survival and vengeance. Her defiance hardened, driven now by a mother's grief and an unyielding resolve to avenge her son and protect her remaining family from the tyrannical forces that had taken so much. But the heartbreak did not end there. In a move that felt like the ultimate betrayal, Sir Richard Bingham soon captured and imprisoned Gray's two remaining sons, Tibbet and Murrough. Stripped of her heirs, with her power structure crumbling and her legacy teetering on the precipice of extinction, Gray OMalley found herself in an impossible situation. The very foundation of her world, her family, was being systematically dismantled by Bingham's relentless cruelty. With her sons languishing in English dungeons, her lands under siege, and her authority severely diminished, Gray knew she had exhausted all conventional avenues of resistance. To save her family and preserve any hope for the future, she would have to take an unprecedented risk, one that no Irish chieftain, let alone a woman, had ever dared to attempt. Defeat loomed large, a cold, crushing weight on Gray OMalley. Her lands were ravaged, her family scattered, and her two sons, Theobald and Murrough, along with her half-brother, languished in Sir Richard Bingham's dungeons, victims of the English governor's relentless persecution. Faced with utter ruin, with everything she had fought for crumbling around her, the pirate queen conceived a plan so audacious, so unprecedented, it bordered on madness. She would bypass the corrupt governor entirely. She would appeal directly to the most powerful monarch in Europe, Queen Elizabeth I of England. It was a desperate gamble, a journey into the heart of the empire that sought to dismantle her world, a last roll of the dice in a game she was rapidly losing. For Gray, a woman accustomed to battle, this was a diplomatic war, and her very survival, and that of her clan, depended on its success. And so, the legendary pirate queen, no longer leading a raiding party, but embarking on a mission of profound diplomacy, turned her prow eastward. From the rugged shores of Connacht, Gray OMalley set sail across the tempestuous Irish Sea, a journey fraught with peril not just from the elements, but from the very English ships that patrolled these waters. This was a voyage unlike any she had undertaken before. Her usual maritime skirmishes were traded for the silent tension of a diplomatic passage, her battle cries replaced by the quiet determination of a mother fighting for her children. Each wave that crashed against her vessel brought her closer to a world utterly alien, a world of gilded cages and whispered power, far removed from the raw freedom of her Atlantic domain. The sheer magnitude of her undertaking underscored her unparalleled courage. Arriving in the sprawling, cacophonous metropolis of London, a city teeming with life, intrigue, and rigid social structures, Gray OMalley faced her next colossal hurdle. How could a notorious Irish chieftainess, a known pirate in English eyes, possibly secure an audience with the impenetrable Queen Elizabeth I? Yet improbably she did. History hints at the quiet, strategic hand of figures like Sir William Cecil, Elizabeth's chief advisor, or perhaps Sir Francis Walsingham, her spymaster, who may have seen political advantage in hearing Gray's grievances. Or perhaps it was simply Elizabeth's own insatiable curiosity, her desire to meet the she-wolf of the West face to face, to measure the mettle of a woman who ruled in a world so different from her own. Regardless of the exact pathway, the stage was set for one of history's most extraordinary encounters. Grain O'Malley stepped into a world utterly alien, a glittering cage of power and pretense. The opulent, rigid, and intrigue-filled court of Queen Elizabeth I. Gone were the salty winds and open horizons of Connacht, replaced by the suffocating scent of perfumes, the rustle of silks and velvets, and the hushed whispers of courtiers vying for favor. Every gesture, every glance, every word held coded meaning. Here, men wore ruffs as high as their heads, and women's gowns were intricate architectural wonders. The wild Irish chieftainess, accustomed to the raw honesty of her own people and the directness of the sea, found herself navigating a labyrinth of ceremonial protocol and subtle power plays. She was an anomaly, a stark, untamed contrast against the refined, glittering tapestry of the English monarchy, observing all with a keen, unblinking gaze. And then, the moment arrived. In a silent, tension-filled chamber, two titans met. Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, seated on her throne, a monarch of a nascent empire, her gaze sharp, intelligent, and commanding. Standing before her, unbowed, was Grain O'Malley, the pirate queen of Connacht, a ruler of a different kind, forged in the crucible of coastal raids and clan warfare. Both were formidable women, leaders in a man's world, shrewd and ruthless in their own domains. They represented opposing forces, English expansion versus Irish sovereignty. Yet in that shared space, their eyes locked, they recognized something of themselves in the other. It was a meeting of equals in spirit, if not in station, a silent appraisal between two lionesses who had clawed their way to power and held it with an iron grip. As Grain O'Malley entered the Queen's presence, the court held its breath. Tradition demanded a deep curtsy, an acknowledgement of subservience to the English crown. But Grain did not bow. Her head remained proudly erect, her gaze steady. And when offered a court dress, she famously refused, preferring her own traditional Irish attire. A practical, robust garment that spoke of movement and action, not the stiff formality of English fashion. This was no mere oversight. It was a potent act of defiance. By refusing to conform, Grain asserted her own sovereign identity. She came not as a subject seeking mercy, but as a chieftainess demanding justice, an equal in her own right. In that moment, she challenged the very notion of English dominion, affirming her distinct Gaelic identity before the most powerful woman in Europe, with Grain speaking only her native Irish Gaelic, and Elizabeth fluent in English, French, and Latin. A potential chasm of communication loomed. Yet, in a surprising testament to Grain's education and intellect, a common bridge was found: Latin. This ancient language, the lingua franca of scholarship and diplomacy across Europe, allowed these two formidable women to converse directly, without the need for an interpreter to filter or distort their words. It spoke volumes of Grain's upbringing, where a classical education was not uncommon among the Gaelic aristocracy. More profoundly, it forged an unexpected intellectual common ground, allowing them to engage in a direct, unmediated exchange that transcended the vast cultural and political divides separating their worlds. The pirate queen was also a scholar, and the English queen a polyglot. Finally, the moment came for Grain to articulate her case. With clarity and an unwavering resolve, she laid bare her petition before the Queen. Her words, delivered in the precise cadence of Latin, detailed the litany of injustices inflicted by Sir Richard Bingham. The wanton destruction of her lands, the theft of her cattle, the cruel imprisonment of her sons, Theobald Burke and Murrough O'Flaherty, and her half-brother, Donald. This was no tearful plea for mercy. It was a demand for justice, a testament delivered by a chieftainess to a fellow ruler. Grain framed her arguments not as a subject begging a monarch, but as a sovereign wronged, seeking redress for what she considered acts of war against her clan. Her voice, though speaking in ancient tongue, resonated with a timeless claim to fair treatment and respect. In the opulent grandeur of Whitehall Palace, a moment of profound historical significance unfolded. This was Grain O'Malley's ultimate gambit, a plea to Queen Elizabeth I not merely for a pardon, but for the restitution of her family's freedom, the return of her ancestral lands, and, astonishingly, the unprecedented right to retain her formidable fleet. The air was thick with tension as the Irish chieftainess, unbound by courtly protocol, stood before the Virgin Queen. Grain argued her case not with deference, but with a sharp wit, an undeniable courage, and a deep, intuitive understanding of power dynamics that transcended language barriers. She laid bare the injustices, but also highlighted the strategic value of her allegiance, subtly shifting the narrative from a pirate's petition to a political proposition. This was a battle of wills, fought not with swords, but with words. Queen Elizabeth I, the Lioness of England, was no stranger to political theater, nor to calculated risk. Her decision to entertain Grain's audacious petition was far from an act of benevolence. It was a cold, strategic calculation. England was locked in a bitter struggle with Catholic Spain, and Ireland, particularly its western seaboard, represented a dangerous potential foothold for a Spanish invasion. Elizabeth, ever the pragmatist, may have seen in Grain O'Malley not a mere pirate, but a formidable potential ally, a bulwark in the West capable of disrupting Spanish designs. Furthermore, granting Grain's request served as a potent, public humiliation for Sir Richard Bingham, the English governor of Connacht, whose misrule and overreach had become a persistent thorn in the crown's side. The pirate queen's plight offered a convenient tool to assert royal authority and undermine a troublesome subordinate. Against all conventional wisdom, against the scorn of her English adversaries, Grain's negotiation was a resounding success. Elizabeth I, in a move that shocked many in her court, granted the Irish chieftainess a full pardon for her past piratical activities. More crucially, she issued direct orders to Sir Richard Bingham. Grain's imprisoned sons were to be immediately released, and her family's extensive lands and castles in Connacht were to be restored to their rightful ownership. But the true testament to Grain's unparalleled negotiation skills lay in the most extraordinary clause of all. She was permitted to keep her formidable fleet. This was contingent, of course, on her ships being used in service of the crown, a subtle yet crucial shift from independent predator to powerful asset. It was an outcome that defied expectations, securing not just Grain's freedom, but her power base. The retention of her fleet was the linchpin, the very heart of Grain's triumph. For a woman whose life had been defined by the sea, by the roar of cannons and the snap of sails, her ships were more than mere vessels. They were an extension of her identity, the tangible embodiment of her power, her freedom, and her very spirit. Without them, she would have been reduced to a landlocked chieftainess, stripped of her unique advantage and her legendary status. This unprecedented concession by Elizabeth I cemented Grain O'Malley as a truly unique figure in the annals of history. A pirate queen who, having faced the might of an empire, not only walked away with her life and lands, but remarkably kept her weapons, her means of defiance, and her very source of sovereignty. It was a testament to her unwavering resolve and Elizabeth's astute political gambit. Grain returned to Ireland, not as a broken supplicant, but as a victorious queen, her sons freed, her lands restored, and her fleet intact. The journey back across the Irish Sea was undoubtedly filled with a sense of triumph. Yet, the celebratory mood must have been tempered by the stark reality awaiting her. While her personal battle had been won, the underlying pressures of English rule had not receded. The landscape of Connacht, though familiar, was forever changed by years of occupation and conflict. English garrisons remained entrenched, the political climate remained treacherous, and her old adversary, Sir Richard Bingham, though humiliated by the Queen's direct intervention, was far from defeated. His resentment would fester, ensuring that Graine's saga of defiance was far from over, merely entering a new, complex chapter. The peace was fragile, the victory bittersweet. Even with a royal pardon secured and her status somewhat solidified, Graine O'Malley's life remained a maelstrom of activity and political intrigue. The agreement with Elizabeth I was a diplomatic coup, but it didn't transform her into a docile subject overnight. She continued to navigate the treacherous waters of Irish politics, a delicate balance between fulfilling her promise to serve the crown and pursuing her own interests, particularly the protection of her family and her September. Sometimes this meant harrying Spanish ships for the English, leveraging her naval expertise for the Queen. Other times, it meant subtly defying English authority when it impinged on her traditional rights or the welfare of her people. Her post-pardon existence was a masterclass in pragmatic survival, a testament to her enduring spirit and adaptability in a world constantly shifting beneath her feet. The pirate queen remained, in essence, her own sovereign. The humiliation of Sir Richard Bingham by Elizabeth I's direct intervention in Graine O'Malley's favor was a wound that never truly healed. His power curtailed, his authority publicly challenged by a mere Irish, barbarous woman. Bingham's resentment simmered, then boiled over. He remained Graine's most persistent and venomous adversary, finding new, insidious ways to harass her, her family, and her dependents, meticulously seeking to undermine her power and directly challenge the Queen's pardon. He seized cattle, imposed unfair taxes, and engineered minor legal skirmishes, proving that even a royal decree offered little solace against a determined, vindictive foe. This bitter rivalry, a personal feud played out against the backdrop of Anglo-Irish conflict, persisted for years, a dark shadow over Graine's twilight years, until Bingham's eventual removal from office in 1597 offered a measure of belated relief. Graine O'Malley, the pirate queen, lived to a remarkable old age, a true survivor in a tumultuous era. She witnessed the death of her great counterpart, Queen Elizabeth I, in 1603, marking the end of the Tudor dynasty and the beginning of a new chapter for Ireland under James I. Graine herself is believed to have passed away around the same year, or shortly thereafter, in the midst of Ireland's continued, brutal transformation under English rule. Her life had spanned a period of intense change from the relatively independent Gaelic order of her youth to the ever-tightening grip of the English crown. She left behind not just a legend, but an extraordinary legacy, a woman who defied every expectation of her time, challenged an empire, and through sheer force of will and cunning, carved out a path of autonomy and power. Her spirit, untamed and indomitable, continues to resonate through the centuries. The ink on official treaties barely dry. Graham's story had already set sail on the winds of Irish oral tradition. Almost immediately, she transcended mere history, morphing into Graham Hale, the legendary chieftain, the pirate queen whose name echoed through every hearth and harbor along Ireland's rugged west coast. Around crackling peat fires in Connemara cottages, her audacious raids, her cunning escapes from English garrisons, and her unwavering spirit were recounted with fervor, transforming her into a powerful, living symbol. She became the embodiment of Irish defiance against an encroaching empire, a fierce matriarch whose very existence was a testament to female strength in a world dominated by men. Passed down through generations, from grandmothers to eager children, each retelling added new layers to her legend, ensuring that her rebellion, her resilience, and her fierce independence would never be forgotten. Her name, a rallying cry, would echo across the ages as a beacon of resistance for a proud nation, solidifying her place not just in history, but in the immortal soul of Ireland itself. Yet, her story didn't end with romanticized tales. Beyond the myths and the heroic ballads, modern historians have embarked on a meticulous quest to unearth the complex woman behind the legend. They pore over fragmented English government documents, intricate Gaelic annals, and even the covert records of Spanish spies, seeking to reconstruct Grace OMalley's true strategic genius. This contemporary reevaluation recognizes her not merely as a swashbuckling pirate, but as a shrewd politician, exceptionally adept at leveraging shifting loyalties and territorial disputes for her clan's survival. She was a fierce warrior, yes, but also a groundbreaking female leader who commanded not just respect, but genuine power in a deeply patriarchal age, her astute decisions shaping the very future of her people. Her life, stripped of its embellishments, reveals an even more remarkable figure, a woman of unparalleled pragmatism, ambition, and foresight. Ultimately, Grace OMalley, or Graemhale, stands as more than just a figure from legend or a subject of academic study. She was a woman who didn't merely exist within the treacherous political seas of 16th century Ireland. She masterfully navigated them, her formidable intelligence and audacious spirit her unwavering compass. From the windswept, craggy shores of Mayo to the opulent, gilded halls of Queen Elizabeth's court, she shaped her own destiny with resolute purpose, refusing to be defined by gender, societal expectation, or an encroaching empire. She challenged the most formidable power of her age, the nascent British Empire, and, astonishingly, emerged with her freedom and her formidable fleet intact. Grace OMalley remains an inspiring testament to the enduring power of courage, the sharp edge of cunning, and an unyielding determination to be mistress of one's own fate, a true queen of the sea, forever etched into the annals of history and the defiant heart of Ireland. Grace OMalley's life was a tempestuous, exhilarating voyage through an age defined by conquest and rigid power structures. Yet she emerged not merely unscathed, but profoundly triumphant. Her story stands as a monumental testament to the indomitable human spirit, reminding us that true power resides not solely in the might of crowns and armies, but in unwavering courage, acute intellect, and a sheer, unyielding will to survive and, indeed, to thrive against seemingly impossible odds. From the stormy seas of Connacht to the opulent court of Queen Elizabeth I, Grace defied every expectation placed upon her by gender and by empire. She was a mother, a chieftain, a pirate, and a diplomat, a master strategist who navigated the political currents and naval battles of her time with unparalleled skill. She remains a powerful, enduring symbol of independence, a woman who fearlessly dared to chart her own audacious course, never bending to an authority she did not respect. Against all expectations, she negotiated her freedom, kept her formidable fleet, and in doing so, indelibly etched her name into the annals of history as the ultimate pirate queen. What profound lessons can her unwavering spirit, her resilience, and her sheer force will teach us about navigating the immense challenges and turbulent waters in our own lives today?